It is a cool morning in the fall, and I push the digging fork into the side of the hilled-up row and lean back, and the soil lifts and crumbles away, and there they are, potatoes, one after another, pale and clean and round, more than I planted many times over, tumbling out of the dirt like buried treasure a man forgot he hid. From a few seed potatoes cut up in the spring, here is a winter's worth of food, dug from the ground for almost nothing. And meanwhile, down at the store, there is a bag of potatoes for a few dollars, old already, some with sprouting eyes, sprayed so they would not sprout on the shelf, hauled in from far away. And most folks buy that bag week after week, never knowing that the potato is just about the easiest, cheapest, most generous food a family can grow. That one potato becomes 10, and that a small patch of ground will feed them through the whole winter. I am going to show you today how to grow a great crop of potatoes from a few seed potatoes in the ground or in straw or even in a barrel on a porch if you have no yard. And the reason this knowledge has slipped away while the bag on the shelf grows dearer is that there is no money in a family that grows its own potatoes by the bushel for pennies. Here is the truth about the potato that the store would rather not lead with. The potato is one of the most productive and forgiving foods there is. You plant one seed potato, and from it grows a plant that makes many potatoes, 10 or more for the one you put in, and they ask little of you. A bit of ground, some sun, some water, and a little hilling up of soil. This is why the potato kept whole nations fed through hard times, why it was the poor family's mainstay for generations, because it gives so much food for so little ground and so little labor, and it stores all winter in a cool, dark place without canning or freezing or any fuss. There is nothing difficult about it, and nothing you must buy beyond the first few seed potatoes. And even those you can grow from potatoes that have begun to sprout in your own kitchen. The store has simply taken this humble, generous, penny-cheap food, sprayed it to keep on a shelf, hauled it far, and sold it back to people who have forgotten that a corner of their yard would give them all the potatoes they could eat. My name is Jacob Stoltzfus. I am Amish, and I farm here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and the potato has always had its long rows in our garden. We plant them in the spring, hill them up through the summer, dig them in the fall by the bushel, and store them down in the cool of the cellar to eat all the winter through, boiled, fried, baked in soups and stews of food that never fails us. It is one of the surest and most generous things a family can grow, and one of the most satisfying to dig. And I am going to give you the whole of it today, so that a corner of your own ground can feed you the same way. I am going to show you how to start your seed potatoes, how to plant them, and the hilling that multiplies your crop, and then the easier ways, the straw method that needs no digging, and the barrel or bag for those with no garden at all. I am going to be honest about the few real cautions, because there is one thing about potatoes you truly must know for safety, and I will be plain about it. And there is one thing, one simple practice through the summer, that is the whole difference between a few sad little potatoes and a great heaping crop. And most folks never do it, so they plant and walk away and wonder why they got so little. Stay for that part especially, because it is where the harvest is made. Here is what you need, and it is next to nothing. You need seed potatoes, and those are just potatoes saved or bought for planting. You can buy proper seed potatoes, or you can simply plant potatoes from your own kitchen that have begun to sprout, for they will grow. You need a patch of ground or a large container, a barrel, a sack, a tub. You need soil and something to hill up with. More soil or straw or compost. And you need your hands and a fork to dig at the end. Seed potatoes, some ground or a barrel, soil or straw to hill, and a fork. That is the whole of it. And the only thing you may buy is the first few seed potatoes, which then give you potatoes to save for next year's seed besides. Now, here is the one thing about potatoes you truly must know for safety before anything else, because I am always plain with you. Potatoes belong to the nightshade family, and when a potato is exposed to light, it turns green. And that green, along with the sprouts and eyes, holds a substance called solanine that is mildly poisonous and will make you ill if you eat much of it. So 3 plain rules. Do not eat potatoes that have gone green. Cut the green part well away, and if a potato is largely green, give it to the animals or the compost, not the table. Do not eat the sprouts or the soft, heavily sprouted old potatoes. Cut the sprouts off, and if it is shriveled and sprouted soft, discard it. And store your potatoes in the dark, because it is light that turns them green. A cool, dark place keeps them sound and white. The leaves and the green fruits of the potato plant are likewise not for eating. It is the tuber, kept from the light, that we eat. Keep those rules: no green, no soft sprouted ones, store in the dark. And the potato is as safe and wholesome a food as there is. So let me show you how to grow them. First, start your seed potatoes a few weeks before planting by setting them in a bright, cool place to sprout. This is called chitting, and it gives them a head start so they come up fast and strong. You will see short, sturdy, green-purple sprouts form on the eyes. When it is time to plant, after the worst frosts have passed and the soil has begun to warm, take your seed potatoes, and if they are large, cut them into pieces, each piece having an eye or two, and let the cut surfaces dry and heal for a day before planting so they do not rot. Then plant them. Dig a trench or holes several inches deep, set the seed pieces in with the eyes pointing up about a foot apart, and cover them with a few inches of soil. Water them and wait, and in a couple of weeks the green tops push up. Now here is that one practice that makes the whole crop, the thing most folks never do: hilling. As the potato plants grow up, you mound soil or straw or compost up around their stems, burying the lower part of the stem and leaving just the top leaves showing. And you do this again as they grow taller, hilling them up 2 or 3 times through the season until you have a good raised ridge along the row. Here is why it matters so. The potatoes form along the underground stem in the dark soil, and the more of that stem you bury by hilling, the more potatoes the plant makes. And the hilling also keeps the forming potatoes covered and in the dark, so they do not poke up into the light and turn green. The folks who plant their potatoes and never hill them get a few potatoes clustered at the seed. The folks who hill them faithfully get a great long ridge full of potatoes up the whole buried stem. Hilling is where the harvest is made. It costs you nothing but a little soil or straw drawn up around the stems a few times in the summer, and it can double or triple what you dig in the fall. Almost no one is taught it, and it is the whole secret. Let me give you the easier ways now, for those without a tilled garden. The first is the straw or mulch method, and it is wonderfully easy and clean. Instead of digging, you lay your seed potatoes right on the surface of loosened soil or even on the ground, and cover them deep with a thick layer of straw or hay. And as they grow, you keep piling more straw on, hilling with straw instead of soil. The potatoes form up in the moist straw, and at harvest you simply pull back the straw and pick the potatoes off the surface. Clean, No digging, no fork, no skinned potatoes. It is the gentlest way there is, and grand for those who cannot dig. The second way is the container. A large barrel, a tub, a sturdy sack, even a stack of old tires or a wire cage lined with straw. You put a layer of soil in the bottom, plant your seed potatoes, and as they grow, you keep adding soil or straw, hilling up the container until it is full. And at harvest, you tip the whole thing out and gather your potatoes. This lets a family with only a porch or a small yard grow a good bucket of potatoes in a barrel. No ground at all is needed. Now let me give you the deeper part, the harvest and the storing, which is half the value. You can steal early, new potatoes, small and tender, by reaching gently into the hill once the plants have flowered. But the main harvest comes when the plant tops yellow and die back in the fall. That tells you the potatoes are mature. Then, on a dry day, dig carefully with a fork, lifting from the side so you do not spear them, and gather them up. Now, before storing, cure them. Let the dug potatoes sit a week or two in a cool, dark, airy place so their skins toughen. This is what lets them keep for months. Then store them in the dark, in a cellar, a cool room, a box covered to keep out light. Cool, but not freezing, with a little air. Stored right, in the dark and cool, your potatoes will keep through the whole winter and into the spring, and the soundest of them become your seed potatoes for next year, so you need never buy seed again. A few seed potatoes in spring, a winter's food in fall, and next year's seed saved from your own crop. That is the whole circle, turning for free. Let me give you the troubleshooting plainly. If you dug only a few small potatoes, you most likely did not hill them. Hill faithfully next year, and the crop multiplies. If your potatoes were green, they were exposed to light, either poking up out of an unhilled row or stored in the light. Hill them well and store them dark. If they rotted in the ground, the soil may have been too wet, or you planted uncured cut pieces. Let cut seed dry before planting, and do not plant in soggy ground. If the plants browned and died early, and the potatoes were few and rotting, that may be the potato blight, the same late blight that takes tomatoes in a wet year. And I will be honest, that one can take a crop, so do not plant potatoes where potatoes or tomatoes grew last year. Give them air, and in a bad blight year, there is no easy cure. And if stored potatoes sprouted and shriveled, they were too warm or too light. Colder and darker keeps them dormant longer. Nearly every trouble comes back to hilling, to light, or to wet, and the first two are fully in your hands. Let me say a word more about why this matters beyond the saving, because it does. A patch of potatoes is food security in the truest, oldest sense. Potatoes are filling, nourishing, and they keep for months with no canning, no freezing, no electricity, just a cool, dark cellar. A family that grows and stores its own potatoes has a foundation of food laid by for the winter that does not depend on the store, the truck, the power, or the price. That is why the potato was the poor family's salvation for generations, and why it is worth growing still. To dig a bushel of your own potatoes and carry them down to the cellar is to lay up a kind of wealth that money in a bank cannot match. Food in your own hands, grown from a few cut-up spuds and a corner of earth. Let me say more about choosing what to plant, because there is more to it than folks think, and it shapes your whole harvest. Potatoes come in early kinds and main crop kinds. The early kinds grow fast and give you tender new potatoes in early summer, but they do not keep as long. The main crop kinds take longer, but give the big harvest of storing potatoes that carry you through the winter. So, if you have the room, plant some of each, a few early ones for the joy of fresh new potatoes in summer, and a good patch of main crop ones for the cellar. And there are countless varieties beyond what the store ever sells: yellow, red, blue, fingerling, mealy bakers, and waxy boilers, each suited to different cooking and each a pleasure to grow. When you grow your own, you are not stuck with the one or two kinds the store stocks. You can grow the old, the rare, the flavorful sorts, and save their seed year on year. That alone is a reason to grow them. And let me tell you to start small and learn, for the potato is the most forgiving of teachers. You need not plow up a great field your first year. A single short row, or one barrel, or a straw bed the size of a door will give you a taste of it and a bucket of potatoes besides, and teach you the rhythm, the chitting, the planting, the hilling, the digging, so that next year you plant more with confidence. Many a family that now grows half its winter food in potatoes began with a few sprouting spuds from the kitchen pushed into a corner of the yard. The potato asks so little and gives so much that it is the very best food to begin your growing with, whatever small space you have. Start with a few, learn the hilling, and let the crop teach you the rest. And do not overlook how little ground it truly takes. A row a few strides long, well hilled, can give a family a great heap of potatoes. Far more food, pound for pound, of effort and space than almost anything else you might plant. For the small grower with little land, the potato gives the most food for the least ground of nearly any crop there is. That is why it has always been the food of those who had to make the most of a small plot. Now, I want to take a moment, because this is the part that matters. Think about who profits from the bag of potatoes on the store shelf. The potato is one of the cheapest, most generous foods a person can grow. One seed potato becomes 10. A small patch feeds a family all winter. And yet, it is bagged and sold for a few dollars, old and far hauled and sprayed with chemicals to keep it from sprouting on the shelf, and folks buy it again and again without ever thinking that a corner of their yard or even a barrel on the porch would give them all the potatoes they could eat for the cost of a few seed spuds. There is no money in a family that grows its own potatoes by the bushel and saves its own seed and carries them down to its own cellar. The whole arrangement depends on people forgetting that this most humble food that kept their great-grandparents alive through hard winters is theirs almost for the taking. They did not give us a better potato. They sold us back, dear and old and sprayed, the very food that a few cut-up seed potatoes and a little hilling would have given us by the bushel for nearly nothing. So here is what I want you to do this spring. Get a few seed potatoes, or save some from your kitchen that have begun to sprout, and plant them in a row, in a straw bed, or in a barrel if that is all you have. And then, through the summer, do the one thing most folks skip: hill them up again and again, drawing soil or straw around the stems. Then, come fall, push a fork into that hill and feel the potatoes tumble out, more than you ever put in. Once you have dug your own crop one time, you will plant potatoes every year, and that bag on the store shelf will look like the dear, sorry thing it is. Tell me in the comments below. Have you grown your own potatoes, and what kind do you favor? And did your grandparents keep a potato patch and a cellar full for the winter? I read every single one of these, and the old ways you all share are the reason I keep doing this. Next time, I am going to show you how this farm keeps these potatoes and the rest of the harvest, the carrots, the cabbages, the apples, sound and fresh all winter long in the cool of a cellar with no electricity and no freezing, the old way. It is the natural next step after you have grown your crop. Until then, plant your few seed potatoes, hill them faithfully, store them in the dark, save your seed, and remember the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.